In a context of great police repression outside the parliament, the Argentine Senate approved Milei's key project, Law of Bases. In Palestine, the Israeli army is reinforcing the genocidal operation in the Jenin refugee camp. And Russia has started the second phase of exercises of non-strategic nuclear forces. Hello and welcome to From the South. My name is Belén de los Santos and from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba, we begin with the news. In a context of great police repression outside the parliament, the Argentine Senate approved Milei's key project, the Law of Bases. The vote on Milei's key reforms was tied at 36 and defined by Vice President Victoria Villarruel. The Senate approved the mega bill, although the changes in regards to privatizations, the scheme of large investments and pensions were introduced. The project must now go back to the lower chamber to review the modifications or push to approve the original version of the bill with no changes. The debate was marked by vote-buying accusations and heavy repression and the police brutality displayed outside the parliament. And Argentina's President Javier Milei affirmed on Wednesday that the only way for the government to reverse the neoliberal measures that have affected the population so much will be if he is removed dead from the presidential palace.
When you adjust the results of June and keep those of the first semester, we will end up with a large financial surplus. That is to say, the zero deficit is not negotiable in any way. That is to say, you will have to remove me dead from the Rosada to break the fiscal deficit.
In other news, the Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro presented on Wednesday the nation's economic results during the first 5 months of 2024 under the sign of what is known as the economy's 18 engines. The presentation took place during the Los Llanos National Council of Productive Economy held in the state of Apure, where the head of state pointed out that at present Venezuelans are on the road to a powerful and productive country. Maduro also indicated that the state of social welfare has been completely rebuilt and acknowledged the support of private business sector in the building of consensus and public policies for the promotion of economic and social peace. During the event, it was announced that Venezuelan economy grew 7% in the first quarter of 2024, despite the more than 900 sanctions imposed by the United States government.
You do not know how important it has been for the harmonization of public policies that have led us to the recovery of economic growth, to economic stability, to the design of the 18 engines, and to visualize what we are already experiencing. A new diversified economy that allows the opportunity for growth to all entrepreneurs, to all businessmen, to all sectors of the country.
And Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador said that there won't be any change in the nation's direction during the new government of President-elect Claudia Sheinbaum. During a press conference, López Obrador stressed that the new government will pay attention to the vulnerable, the forgotten, and the humiliated people. He also praised Sheinbaum's commitments, which he said will start to be implemented right away, and was confident that the first woman president of the Republic will continue the expansion of the welfare programs initiated by him. The Mexican president said that he is not interested in becoming a caudillo or a moral leader, so he is happy to end his term and retire altogether from politics.
The person who is going to govern has that sensitivity of listening, of paying attention to everyone, of respecting everyone, with preference for the most vulnerable, for the forgotten, for the humiliated. That is very important, because otherwise it would be a step backward, It would mean going back to paying attention only to a minority and forgetting about the people. That is why I am very happy.
In other news, Haiti's new cabinet was formally inaugurated on Wednesday, representing the final step to rebuild the government, which now has to face the nation's gang-led violence and control. More than 2,500 people were killed or injured in the first 3 months of the year, while more than 500,000 have been displaced as Haiti braces for the UN-backed deployment of a Kenyan police force expected in the coming weeks. In his inauguration speech, the new Prime Minister Gary Conille repeated that the need to increase security in the country, which is within the grips of gang warfare that control at least 80% of the capital city of Port-au-Prince.
I pledge to you, my fellow citizens, to serve our nation with integrity, transparency, and dedication. My government will work tirelessly to improve the living conditions of every Haitian, to build a more secure and prosperous future, and to restore the dignity of our people.
Now let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. Other stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. In Palestine, the Israeli army is reinforcing the genocidal operation in the Jenin refugee camp. In this context, hundreds of civilians, mostly women and children, are under military siege and not allowed to enter nor leave the area. The soldiers have reportedly broken into numerous homes and razed private vehicles, as well as the few fruit and vegetable stalls. The occupation forces also carried out demolition operations in several neighborhoods and streets, leaving many areas without electric service. Although there are reports of injuries, medical assistance has not been able to reach the site, as Zionist troops have fired on ambulances and also medical personnel. An Israeli occupation aerial and artillery bombardment of the central Gaza Strip killed at least 6 Palestinians and wounded some 20 others on Wednesday. The occupation warplanes struck a house in the central part of Al Bureij refugee camp, killing at least a civilian and injuring several others. Meanwhile, an Israeli occupation drone targeted a group of civilians in the town of Al-Murghaka in the central strip, killing 5 and injuring 8 others. The fatalities and wounded were rushed to Al-Awda hospital in Nusrat, as confirmed by the hospital.
Who truly understands our suffering? Tell me. As you can see, we left behind all our clothes and belongings. Everything. People pity us. We need the world to show us compassion. I didn't get to enjoy my 4-story home.
I hope for a ceasefire to take place. What has happened to us is enough. It's overwhelming. We are devastated. Please, I call upon the nations to stand by us.
Let's recall that Israel, on trial before the International Court of Justice for genocide against the Palestinians, has been waging a devastating war in Gaza since October 7th, killing at least 37,202 Palestinians and wounded more than 84,000. In addition, approximately 10,000 people are unaccounted for, presumed dead under the rubble or their homes throughout the Strip. Palestinian and international organizations claim that the majority of the dead and wounded are women and children. And also in this context, health sources in Palestine warned in a statement that hospitals, health centers, and the only oxygen station in Gaza are at risk of suspending operations due to the lack of fuel as a result of the ongoing Israeli aggression against the region and its full control and closure of all border crossings. The sources stressed that if operations are suspended, it would put at risk of death dozens of sick and injured people. And we stay in the Gaza Strip as more than 8,000 children aged under 5 have been treated for acute malnutrition since war broke out. WHO chief said that 28 of those children had died and a significant proportion of Gaza's population is now facing catastrophic hunger and famine-like conditions.
Despite reports of increased delivery of food, there is currently no evidence that those who need it most are receiving sufficient quantity and quality of food. WHO and our partners have scaled up nutrition services. Over 8,000 children under 5 years old have been diagnosed and treated for acute malnutrition, including 1,600 children with severe acute malnutrition.
We now move on to other topics. At least 49 people have died in a fire that swept through a workers' housing building in Mangaf district of southern Kuwait. Dozens of residents of the building were injured in the blaze, which broke out early on Wednesday morning. Officials said initial reports suggest that fire was linked to violations of building regulations, with local media reporting that the Interior Minister, Sheikh Fah Al-Yufuz Al-Sabah, has ordered the arrest of the owner. Authorities are currently searching the area for evidence. Most of the deaths are believed to be as a result of smoke inhalation while residents were sleeping. We have a final short break coming up, but before, we invite you to join our WhatsApp community for our English-speaking audience. You can scan the QR code on screen to join directly and also share the link to reach more people. Constant news coverage of Latin America and the Caribbean, as well as the rest of the world. Stay connected and informed with teleSUR. Final short break. Don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. Russia has started the second phase of exercises of non-strategic nuclear forces. The Russian Defense Ministry has reported that the Leningrad military district forces, specifically its missile personnel, are carrying out combat training tasks that include covert movement to a designated position. The preparation, that also entails sea maneuvers and electronic missile launches against conditional enemy targets, happens amid heightened tensions provoked by the North Atlantic Treaty Organization and some European governments. The European elections have shown a growth of the extreme right in the continent. Let's see the details with our correspondent Andrés Flores.
The elections in the European Union Parliament have revealed a growth of the far right at the continental level, with some of its greatest exponents in France and Germany.
The rise of the extreme right in Europe is a matter of concern. I think it is due to a lack of adaptation of social democracy to the European one. As it is said here, the left is quite a minority, every time more so, and I think we must work from the left of social democracy, to fight the extreme right discursively and win the cultural battle against them.
Combatir frontalmente a la ultraderecha discursivamente y ganarles la batalla cultural.
In Spain, in addition to the admission of 6 deputies of the extreme right-wing Vox to the European Parliament, another ultra-right party called Se Acabó la Fiesta, SALF, won seats for the first time.
A farm whose tomatoes already needs more paper to leave the orchard that an illegal immigrant needs to enter this country.
For Danza Arla, this party has oriented its messages to the youngest.
Y entran otros factores como el Partido Nuevo.
And among other factors, such as the new party of Se Acabó la Fiesta, which I think has hurt the Vox party in these elections and has been able to better capture that indignation, that young vote.
Esa indignación, ese voto joven.
For activist Joseph Luis del Alcázar, the alt-right has been able to channel social anger over the lack of resolution of social problems.
It is an attempt to express that this desperation could be channeled to the left, facing the issue, and after this failure that have not ended up solving the problem of the peoples, there is a leaning towards those parties that somehow provide easy solutions.
In several analyses, it has been pointed out how part of the youth has been involved with far-right parties. However, there is also another large part of the youth that has been in the streets fighting alongside workers for more rights.
I believe that this social polarization is also perceived by the youth, and there is a sector that unfortunately looks for the solution by identifying the guilty one among us. That is a bit if it is the immigrant, if it is the woman, or if it is in some way the one who does not think like me. But there is also a sector that beginning to look for the other forms of solidarity and struggle as we have seen. For example, in the issue with mention of Palestine.
The polls prior to the elections indicated a large growth of the alt-right, which, although not of such magnitude, this type of grouping has been strengthened.
Andrés Flores, teleSUR, Barcelona.
And we go now to sports, as a heritage town in Colombia produces most of the country's football balls. About 15 families have dedicated their lives for 4 generations to this handmade art. Our colleague Valeria Cardona tells us the story of one of these families.
The heritage town of Monguí in Boyacá has a strong tradition of producing football balls, a place where the craft of handmade footballs has transcended from generation to generation. This is their story.
A few years ago, 2 brothers began to venture into the elaboration and transformation of leather and the production of the ball. They introduced the profession of using an ensemble factory system. They began to provide work for people who were doing this job, along with their daily work.
Estos hermanos eran Froilán y Manuel Ladino.
These brothers were Froilán and Manuel Ladino, who in 1934 brought to Monguí the ball that will initiate a tradition of craftsmanship. They taught 12 of their countrymen, known as the 12 Apostles, the technique for making them. Once a week, in front of the Ladino's house, a line will form with people from the town and farmers from nearby village who will walk a few kilometers to Monguí to sell them the production of balls that will later be sent to a nearby town to be distributed throughout the country. Part of these people from Monguí were the parents of Anselmo Barrios and his wife Mariela.
Since I was in my mother's belly, she used to work doing balls, and then I continued also making the balls. I made any balls, sewn with leather.
We would sit on the benches, we would bring the boards, we would bring the material to the warmest parts, we would light the charcoal stove, and then we would put wood on it first and then the charcoal, so it would light up and it would be warm in the kitchen, and we would sew the balls.
From the fire pit in the grandparents' Barrios house, this family's legacy came to the cracks factory created by Nelson Barrios and managed by his son Arley Barrios.
I'm honored to be the 4th generation to do so. This means a great responsibility for me. It is learning how to do it as a kid. While many kids were running after a ball, we were producing it. I grew up in a pure ball-making environment, creating piece by piece. My father taught me the process of stamping, how it was to cut a ball, and so I learned more as I grew up. Today, thanks to my knowledge and studies, I have been able to implement new trends in these products.
Como la familia Barrios, decenas de familias acá en Monguí.
Like the Barrios family, dozens of families here in Monguí have dedicated their lives to football balls and will continue to do so for generations.
Valeria Cardona, desde Monguí en Boyacá.
And like this, we have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also join us on social media. We are on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and also on TikTok. For TeleSUR English, my name is Belén de los Santos. Thank you for watching.